Happy Easter. It's almost over, but I wanted to uh, give a little bit of a devotional, maybe some insight into one element of the nature of God. And I was doing my devotionals this morning, and I was also doing some reading, and I ran across something interesting that somebody had a perspective on the book of Matthew that was really good. And Matthew was the outcast tax collector, and he was hated by any good Jew, the religious leaders. They were shunned by most of the society because they worked for the Romans, and the Romans, of course, were viewed as the occupiers. And sometimes they would also take a little extra to line their own pockets over and above whatever they collected in taxes on behalf of Caesar. So they weren't people that were well liked. And yet, Jesus saw this guy, and as he was uh, in this middle of this crowd of people, and Matthew, he was short, a short guy. He climbed up in a tree, and Jesus looked over and saw him, and he said, "Come out of that tree. I'm going to eat at your house tonight." And to make a long story short, um, Matthew stood up and said, "From here on out, I'm going to deal fairly, and I'm going to pay back." I think it was double or even four times the amount of people if I have defrauded anyone. And Jesus said, "Today is salvation come to this house." And so Jesus is always looking for the outliers. God has his eyes on people who really, if you feel like you don't have anything to offer society, or you don't feel like you're good enough, or you have some things going on with depression and kind of a low self worth, because I think our tendency as human beings is we beat ourselves up maybe a lot more than we should. But in the beginning of Matthew, there was in Matthew chapter 1, verses 20 through 23, and this is the complete Jewish Bible, but it says, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph, who was going to take Mary to be his wife. And he said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Miriam home with you as your wife. For what has been conceived in her is from the Ruach HaKodesh. She will give birth to a son, and you are to name him Yeshua, which means Adonai saves, because he will save his people from their sins." And all of this happened in order to fulfill what Adonai had said through the prophet. "The virgin will conceive and bear a son, and they will call him Emmanuel." And the names means God is with us. And then if you go through the book of Matthew all the way to the very end, and Jesus is talking to them after his resurrection, and he is appeared to the 12 disciples, and before he goes back up into heaven, it begins in Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20. It says, "Yeshua came and talked with them, and he said, 'All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make people from all nations into disciples, immersing them into the reality of the Father, the Son, and the Ruach HaKodesh, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I will be with you always, yes, even until the end of the age.'" And so at the very beginning of Matthew and at the very end, this tax collector who became a disciple uh, illuminated the fact that God is with us, and He is with us. He is so solidly with all of those who are poor in spirit. If you're going through difficult times, and and uh, and you need, a lot of people feel like they just can't make it anymore. But He is. God is with us, and He's done some amazing things in the last 2 or 3 years. I haven't had a chance to really go to church. The nature of what's been going on with, first, of course, the pandemic, and many churches are not open. But then also on Sundays, we take care of my mother in law. And so it limits what we do where we go. Um, so we've got, but I haven't been inactive during that time. One of the things that I've done is I've just kind of worked with the people that God has put around me. And so, I've got a fellow named Ronnie who works with me, and a fellow named Ed, and then there are some other folks that I interact with. But these guys, every one of them, I pray for them. We talk, and I think what I try and do is impart things to them that will make them more aware of the operative reality of the Father, the Son, and in particular, the Holy Spirit, and how He works in our lives. And so take courage from this and read that first chapter of Matthew and that last chapter of Matthew, and just look at that and think about that, that God is with us, and there are no barriers. He is simply looking for anyone that needs hope, and that needs to know that God is real, that He exists, and that He loves people. So, Holy Spirit, I ask you to come. And for anyone that's struggling right now with feeling alone or unloved, and anyone that is dealing with the issues of anger and bitterness and aloneness, uh, Holy Spirit, I ask you right now to come, and I ask you to touch them and let your peace fill the room. Some of you, even now, can feel that sense of peace, and just dial back. Just dial it back. A lot of times I'll hold out my hands like I'm receiving a gift, and the Holy Spirit comes, and the peace is profound. So I hope you find this helpful. Happy Easter, and we'll talk again.